then I run and follow her call. 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 They run and follow her call. They call me and you have been both with.
Right, welcome to my weekly blog. This week it's going to be quite short. Few things to note. First, UFC 149 has occurred, and so has my recap video, which is up. So do watch that and enjoy it. We now have a break for a week on the UFC scene, so no predictions video this week. The other thing to say is that the Olympics, the 2012 Olympics in London, are about to begin, and so far things have not looked so bright. They've had a number of issues which have been quite embarrassing. The first was tickets. A lot of tickets went to multi-million pound companies who then did special sort of prize giveaways to people, which meant that a lot of people who wanted to go couldn't. And then they had the problem that they were left over with loads of tickets for events that nobody wanted to go to, including the football tournament, strangely enough. I don't know if they still do Olympic tiddlywinks, but I don't suppose those would be very popular either. I fear greatly for the opening ceremony. The Olympic torch is now in London for this final week, and London itself has had problems already. We've had two unions threaten strikes. I think the first one was something to do with the buses or the trains, and we had border control saying they weren't going to bother and stuff like that. You know, I think they do it deliberately, and I don't think they should over the Olympics period, just because they're going to make themselves look like complete arseholes. And isn't the idea of a strike that you at least have public support on your side, not that you make yourself look like you deserve whatever it is you're striking against? The other problem was one of the major roads between one of the airports and the Olympic Village was shut because a big crack was found in one of the overpasses. Why it wasn't found before, I don't know. They did first. First they were saying it could take ages, you know, days and weeks to open, and that next minute, you know, it's opened overnight. So I have no idea if that's safe or not. And then there's the Olympic lanes. Obviously, London is terribly built up, so to create extra roads or anything like that for the Olympics is going to be impossible. So they have cut the number of roads open to normal traffic to create basically an additional bus lane, which they're calling an Olympic lane, for Olympic people to use. And there's all sorts of disputes about when these open, when they're operating, who's actually qualified to travel in them, all that sort of stuff. It's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare. So I'm not expecting big things from the opening ceremony. It certainly won't be Beijing. The plan that I saw last was something to do with sheep. I sincerely hope not, but you never know with England, and it's likely going to rain as well. So anyway, enough of that, because that is trivial compared to some things that have happened this week, including the massacre at one of America's cinema. You know, there has been issues over this film. It's the latest in the Batman films to come out, including death threats being issued to critics, film critics, who will write against it. Why there is so much mania over it, I'm not sure. Not the sort of film I would go and see. I don't tend to like this sort of Marvel comic type, you know, Spider-Man, Batman. I don't bother. I watch them when they come out on TV. I wouldn't, you know, go to the cinema over it. But obviously it's proved quite popular. And they had a case in the US of basically a full house full of cinema goers. And I think halfway through or something like that, a gunman burst in and basically killed loads of people. Why? Who knows? There's bound to be the first thing that a lot of people over here are going to say. Well, you know, that's what you get when you allow a culture where anybody can basically legally buy guns and do what they want with them. But I think this is a little bit more difficult than that. That's quite an easy get-out clause for a population over here that have, you know, gun restrictions that say you can't legally buy them, and that's that. You know, it only takes one person to get hold of a gun, whether legally or not, to go and do something like that. So I think we should avoid the talk about gun laws. I think what we ought to focus on more is what on earth would create a situation where somebody would do something like that. And you know, I have three answers for that. The first one is, I do believe that as our culture and the American culture, which I've already spoken, has, you know, some differences with it, but as these cultures sort of go into dystrophy, basically, entropy is what I mean, they break down and they get taken over by secularism and stuff like that. They don't have, the people growing up in them do not have the moral codes that will stop them from doing something, you know, terribly, you know, awful. I have to say, I think the other thing that does it is this postmodernism that we're in now, and I think that's also responsible for creating the sort of things that will make somebody crack in order to do something like that. I think it's fair to say that people who do things like that are not in their right mind. And so the question is, what makes them like that? You know, even if it's premeditated, they're obviously not completely sane human beings. Because completely sane human beings are surely law-abiding citizens for a start. Even if they have no morals, they would follow the law, one presumes. And I think what does it is that, you know, without that sort of religious framework, you have a situation where anything goes, and I think that's not actually complementary to people's development. I think they get confused about what life is all about, and because everything seems as good as everything else, you know, it's all equal, isn't it? Which means, great, everything can go, but it's also, at the end of the day, what's real? I mean, it's all pointless. Surely it's all pointless at the end of the day. You know, there's too much choice, there's fragmentation going on left, right and centre, and people's minds are not made to cope with things like that, and eventually they just sort of crack. I don't know whether they want to experience killing other people, or they want to, you know, what would it feel like to do that, or, you know, as a bit of a game, shall I do it and not realise that it's, you know, quite as real as... I don't know, I just think that it does make you terribly desensitised, and I think that's another problem with the response to it. I don't know how it is in the US, but I do know in the UK, and I will make an example of this, that we tend to only care about things like this for a very short period of time. Do you know, as I said before, the Olympics will happen at the end of this week. You know, the day after the Olympic bid was announced as being successful and London was going to host the event, we had the London bombings. July has been this year, and I've heard absolutely nobody mention the London bombings at all. You know, nobody seems to care anymore. They cared the first year, when there was a national 2-minute silence, and they haven't really cared ever since. And I don't suppose they ever will. And the problem is that it's happened so often, you know, in Britain, you know, car bombs here and there, all the way through the years of fighting with the IRA, terrorism, you know, it's becoming so commonplace that there's a tendency, there's a temptation to become desensitised to it and go, oh dear, it's happened again. You know, I'm glad to say that the Americans that I certainly have, you know, spoken to and interacted to are very, very upset, very distressed about this. And I've said to them, you know, that is a good thing, because it's a horrible thing to have happened, and it's okay to feel sad and to feel angry about it. that's okay. In fact, that's at least shows that there's some moral sense of outrage about it, rather than apathy or just desensitisation. So, this blog has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would, but there we are. The other thing I wanted to say, two things really, is that I am, over the course of the next couple of years, every so often in the blog, it will be taken over by a project called Living and Learning, where a lot happened to me between 2003 and 2006, and as we reach the decade of those events, the week nearest, my weekly blog will focus on events, and it will tell you, you know, what happened, what went wrong, what I learnt from it, etc, etc. And I'm going to be brutally honest about that. So there we are. Also, I'm terribly sorry that I missed the announcement last week that two fighters, Marcus Cowell, and who was the other person? Somebody whose name escapes me. Anyway, they had fights this past week and they both won. I unfortunately didn't announce it the week before, but I am pleased to say that they won, and I am sorry for not announcing it, and also forgetting the other chap's name. I'll have to put it in the credits at the end. So there we are. I'm going to sort of be a little bit more, because I've lapsed a little in looking for things like that, so going to have to get on board with that as well. And that's my weekly blog for this time.